You are listening to the B2B Marketing Mindset with Pete Monfre and Bill Lowell. We want to help demystify marketing to reduce risk, drive more and better opportunities, and grow your business. Are you ready to master marketing?
Okay. All right. It's time to get into the B2B Marketing Mindset with myself and Bill Lowell. Hi, Bill.
Hey, how you doing?
You know, every week we go live on LinkedIn and we try to educate. We share things we know, everything we know. We want to help you make better decisions. Can get a little academic, I think, sometimes. And so today I thought we would do something a little bit different. We're going to share with you some areas sometimes that we made bad decisions and just the craziness sometimes of the marketing industry, and just tell some stories about, you know, our 30 years in this business and together and apart. It's pretty crazy. We just thought it might be fun. So we're just going to have some fun today. We hope you enjoy it. As usual, there's a lot more B2B Marketing Mindset at the website. You can see that address on your screen, and I encourage you to check that out. So I also want to be sure to acknowledge that we appreciate every client, all right, because we learn something from every one of them. And we don't mean to disparage them in any way. We just think some of these things are funny. Most of them are definitely on us. You know, the agency business, it can be very stressful. And I think creative teams, you know, you got to have a way to blow off steam. And we would do that. And sometimes it would turn out terribly, terribly wrong. And so I thought we would do that today. What do you think?
I think it'll be fun. And I've got a lot of other stories where I learned something, and it may not be funny, but it's just some good messages. So it should be a lot of fun, and I hope people enjoy it. By the way, one of the things I was noticing, I love is that a violin in the back that you've got, and the guitar?
That is a violin.
I think you should be playing that for us sometime, just for the fun of it. So if these stories get boring, you know, we're going to your music. That's what we're doing, okay?
Well, you don't want to hear the violin. In fact, here in Texas, we call that either a tiny guitar or a fiddle.
Yep.
But that actually is a fiddle that my dad made.
Wow.
One of, I believe, 13 violins that he made toward the end of his life. This was one of the early ones. We can tell because the F holes are a little crookedy. But he made them in the very old Italian tradition and made them by hand, one at a time. I think a violin took about 8 months to make from scratch.
Oh, wow.
And so that's why that's there. But I don't know how to play it. My friend from Asleep at the Wheel set it up for me and then gave me a nice little test drive. And we sent that to my mom. We thought that would be kind of neat.
That is actually beautiful, really.
And she said it's actually a pretty good sounding violin. But I know he was getting top dollar for him too. So, you know, good for him.
Yeah.
I think he was probably in his late 60s when he started doing that. So
Wow.
there's still a chance for us.
Yeah, that's great.
So what do you got? What are you thinking of? I thought of a few things. Some of them painful memories.
When we were preparing, I think I have 10 pages of stories here. So,
well, it's only a 40-minute show.
I know.
We're hoping that this is streaming to LinkedIn. They're having some kind of technical problem there, so we don't know if our LinkedIn audience is seeing us. Who cares? So, apparently they are.
Hey, this will turn into a story.
At least my mom.
This is going to be one of our stories today. If it's, you know.
That's right.
Problem with LinkedIn. Why don't you tell the first story, and then we can, you know, go back and forth, or whatever you want to do.
Sure, I'll tell. I can tell a little short story. You know, back in Milwaukee, you know, I live in Austin, Texas now. The company's here in Austin, but we started in Milwaukee. Very different culture, right? This is how we dressed in Milwaukee. We don't dress this way in Austin. I only dress this way because Bill does on the podcast. You know, we're walking around in sweats and T-shirts around here. But in Milwaukee, so Austin, big music town, right? And so, but in Milwaukee, one of the things I tried to do is I've played music for going on 44 years. This will be my last year of doing it. And we ran the agency at the same time. And I really tried very hard to keep those two worlds separate. You know, I didn't think clients would appreciate it. I think the culture there is different where, you know, they look at you funny in Milwaukee if you're a musician. Here in Austin, it's the opposite. So they look at you funny if you're not a musician. And so, but I really tried to keep that separate. And I don't remember the exact year, but I think it was around 1996. We won an award. We won best swing band in Milwaukee. And so we started getting publicity, and we had an open invitation to go on the college radio station there. We used to play live on the radio all the time, and so word, was getting out. And I actually had at least 2 clients call me into the office, to their office, and these are big clients. I think one was Rockwell, and they said, "Look, man, what are you doing? What are you doing here? You going to go do the music thing, or are you going to keep the agency running, or what?"
Oh, wow.
What's going on? And I just had to tell them. I said, "Are you serious?" Because the music industry is a great way to make tens of dollars. And so, yeah, we'll be running the agency, no problem. This is just my little hobby on the side. I was also Mr. April in the Chicago Blues calendar. I don't remember the year. That might have been 94 or something like that. Now, I was it was just a picture performing at a giant festival. It wasn't like me reclining, with a big hairy chest and underpants, nothing like that. So,
Wow.
do with what you will with that story.
That's a great one.
But I forgot about the award. I was actually kind of Googling that band name, which was pretty unique. And the band name has my name in it, back then. And I was really surprised to find that, somebody had archived all the awards from all the years. And I forgot that we got that award. And also in Austin, we were voted most uniquely Austin by the Austin Greater Chamber of Commerce here.
Yeah. So are you sure you're not just taking, instead of retiring, are you sure you're not just like Bruce Springsteen and just going to take a year off for a little bit? And
I don't know. If you're in Austin, you're listening to this, you want to come out and see it, it's December 9th at the Saxon Pub. I'm doing my last show. I have 57 musicians. They won't be playing at that show, but it's been a long, amazing ride. And it's just, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
You guys are great, though.
We have a good time. I'll miss it, but yeah, very different cultures in Milwaukee and in Austin.
I think you should send that like a YouTube clip to your client up in Milwaukee when you tell them you're done and now you're ready to work with them again full time. So
yeah, there you go. I should do that.
So I have you can pick. So I have either a story of how I first got interested in marketing, or I have a great customer service learning experience horror story. So which one do you want to hear?
I got to go with the horror story.
All right. So I had actually a very large client, and they decided they wanted us to do customer satisfaction in-person interviews with all of their customers throughout the country. The majority of them were fast food restaurants. So, Burger King in Miami. I mean, we went to everywhere, Wendy's, McDonald's, et cetera, et cetera. And anyhow, they started off really good. So the interviews were going good. I was having a good time giving them feedback. And then I got to one client, and they ended up, and by the way, we're flying there and we're spending the night and then seeing them and then flying home. I mean, so it's an expensive adventure, but it was that important to the client.
That's how we did it back then.
Yeah. And so the one client, the second to last client that I saw, tells me we're just going until the contract is up, and then we're not working with them anymore because they just don't listen to us anymore, So I was like, wow, out of all of the other ones, which were pretty positive, here's a negative one. And so in the research business, this, it's just one. You can't get carried away with that. You got to put it into its aggregate. So I go to the next one, which is a huge, huge one that everybody knows. And they make me wait in the lobby for about a half an hour, 45 minutes past the appointment time. And then all of a sudden, I'm called in, and they sit me down, and they said, I was ready to start my interview questions and blah, blah, blah. I was thinking, geez, you guys aren't offering any water or anything. They said, we're so glad you're here. We wanted you to know that we wanted your client to pay for your flight, your hotel, and everything else so that we can tell you in person we are never doing work with them again. But they never have listened to us throughout. And we thought this would be the only way that they're going to pay attention to what you have to say. So go home and have a nice day. I was there for 5 minutes in the meeting, and that was it. And I had to go home and tell my client. So it was a crazy story. I did learn a lot. I mean, but I have to tell you, even the client, they didn't want to really believe it. So it was,
so they're going to not listen to you either.
Exactly.
So that was an issue. That's what we call a trend.
Don't you think? Yeah.
Wow, that's tough. I mean, in a way, you do research. Those are the things that you need to hear, right? I mean, you don't need to hear everybody telling you great things, how great you are. You're really looking for those things that maybe you're missing or problems. In fact, you're doing a survey for us that we're just starting. And so if you're on LinkedIn, you might see a link to it. I hope you'll take the survey.
So.
And we're just measuring, what are we measuring? Reputation. We're measuring
perception, reputation,
awareness.
Your awareness of your products and services, strengths.
Right, and it's not because we think there's a problem. It's just something that we do periodically and that we preach. So we're taking our own medicine, and we want to see. We want to measure how we're doing.
I think we're even going to evaluate this podcast for you too. So
there you go. And I'm sure there's some people out there that are just going to say terrible things about me, and that's okay.
No,
and I often say, if you've heard good things about me, none of them are true. So there's that. If you remember, in Milwaukee, we had a pretty good sized office. We had offices downtown on Water Street, and it was an old hosiery factory from the late 19th century, and they had rehabbed it into offices. And we had we were trying to remember this last night. It was either the third floor or the fourth floor. I don't remember. We had half of it. And what was the business next door there? It was Melissa and Greg Schumacher. Cityscape, I think it was an engineering firm, so they had the other half. And so what that meant was our office was really kind of long and narrow. It was big, so it was plenty big enough wide, but if you looked at the proportion, it was long and narrow. Well, we would bring our 2 German Shepherd dogs with us to work almost every day, and they were very, very sweet dogs, but they were also very boisterous. And we had a UPS man who was an absolute jerk. I mean, this guy... He was just an asshole. Can I say that? I think I can. The FCC doesn't regulate. I can say whatever I want.
They'll bleep that out.
Yeah, someone will. Whoever they are. But this guy, he just was something else. And so the dogs picked up on that, and they did not like him. And so almost every single day, the dogs somehow could hear him coming. And so as soon as he would open the door, both dogs would run at a full gait, barking and running at this guy. And he would freak out, and he was just terrified. And we'd often hear our receptionist from that front area that we had. We couldn't see up there, but we could hear her laughing. And so it became this thing where it's like we're scaring the crap out of the UPS guy, and pretty soon he got to a point where he just wouldn't. He'd leave the packages outside the door, but they sounded like elephants, and so I just thought that was pretty funny, and because they were so sweet. I mean, these dogs wouldn't hurt a fly. Yeah, you remember the dogs, and the other thing they would do, because it was so long and narrow, is they would get the zoomies about once a day, and they would just run back and forth and skid on the carpet and run back and forth. And of course, then we get a complaint from the people downstairs about elephants being in our office. And I mentioned the engineering firm. The other thing is, once in a while, one or both of them could open the doors, and so they would sometimes get out and they would wander around the building, and they would go to the engineering firm next door. And they just loved him. They didn't care. They were just like, well, we're happy to see him. And eventually they'd either bring him back, or we were, of course, very apologetic. We're like, oh, God, we're so sorry. And they're like, no, we love it. Anytime, it was really funny. And we're still friends with them to this day.
Wow. That's awesome. And dogs, boy, they just have an ability, don't they, to pick up on good people or people that disturb them. I mean, it's really uncanny,
Most people that came in and out, there were people coming in and out all day long. They didn't even notice. They didn't even care. They hated the UPS guy. If I was a dog, I probably would have chased him out too.
Yeah. Those dogs are beautiful. So
they were great.
We still have one now, but yeah.
No, they're long gone. We have a different one now, but
Yeah.
He's not
Great.
up here.
Great.
He's like, screw you guys. I'm laying on the couch. That's it.
Yeah. Uh,
He also
so
hates
I've,
the delivery people. I don't know.
uh-oh, uh-oh, uh-oh. Sometimes it's just if they wear a hat too. Sometimes, I don't know why, but dogs don't like, sometimes when people wear hats. So, does your UPS guy down there wear like a cowboy hat or something?
Ah, no.
Maybe that's it. So
Nah,
kind of crazy. Well, I've got a few more stories. Actually, I have hundreds of stories, but I'll give you another one. So we did we were doing some of the research for an architectural firm that was actually designing the Marquette Dental School. And we worked with a lot of different people on that, like, professors, practicing dentists, dental students, you name it. It was a wonderful study. We had a lot of fun with it, a lot of fun. But the president of the American Dental Association at the time was really a nice guy, and he was heavily involved in this as well. So we were doing focus groups with everybody, trying to figure out what would be ideal for the building. And it was, like I said, a really fun project. And by the way, I don't know if you've ever seen the Marquette Dental School, but it is absolutely beautiful.
apparently one of the premier dental schools in the
It,
country.
it really is. And by the way, they were also looking at outside clinics and everything. And so we did a lot of research. But the funny story about this is all of this work I did, and we worked, like I said, with the president of the ADA. Like, fast forward now, like 10 years later. So I go to a party with my wife, and who's at the party but my wife's sister? It was at their house, and her new boyfriend. Who do you think the new boyfriend is? The guy who was the president of the ADA, and they ended up getting married. I mean, it was like, talk about a small world.
Wow. Yeah.
But I have two brother-in-laws on her side of the family now. One one is that gentleman, and I have another one that was a client too, that we walked in one day and were surprised that the other sister was dating him. So it's like,
Holy
small
cow.
world. So, so you gotta.
Who
So
knew dentistry was
what's the moral of the story?
dentists are so popular with the ladies?
Yeah,
Who
exactly.
knew? I didn't
Exactly.
know.
Actually,
didn't know.
I should correct myself. He was an oral surgeon, but otherwise he'll get mad at me for saying he's a dentist. But but isn't that ironic? So today, when we get together for family functions, I've got two clients that are actually always at the family functions. Kind of funny,
Wow, that's cool though. That's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, there are clients that become like family,
Yeah.
and no client lasts forever. So it's kind of, it gets really cool when, we have this with, our client was with TAP Pharmaceuticals, part of Abbott Labs.
I remember that. I remember
Rick,
that.
still a
Yeah.
great friend to this day. We performed at his wedding. That's a whole funny story unto its own, crazy story, but it was really funny because he was a really funny guy. But yeah, it's actually great. There's a number of people who were clients. I'm thinking of some of the folks at Camtronics, Quest Technologies, and you mentioned the Kletchkas earlier.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
Kletchka Funeral Home Empire, the
Yes.
Buchanan
Right.
Empire.
Professor Kletchka, they were great people.
Yeah, because we used to do marketing for funeral homes before it was cool.
Yeah.
And I actually did the keynote 3 years in a row for the National Funeral Directors Association because I was one of the top marketers for the funereal industry, now called the death care industry, for a number of years because my partner Bruce and I, Bruce Buchanan, if you're out there, still love you, we spun off a separate company that did nothing but that. And then I think, if I remember right, the conglomerate started buying up all the funeral homes, and Jerry Kletchka and his family, I believe they're still independent. I don't know that for sure, but they really held out.
I believe they are, and I'm not sure, but I think Jay, one of the sons, I think
Jay.
he's like president of the association now. So it's like,
Well, they are
in addition
fantastic.
to running just a wonderful family.
And a shout out to them. I'll send them a link. But when my grandmother died, I was first on the scene, and we called the funeral home that they preferred, and we were standing around waiting and waiting and waiting, and I had no experience with this other than just working in the industry. And so who'd I call? I called Jerry Kletchka, and I said, Jerry, what is this normal? What's going on? We've been waiting an hour and nobody's here. Jerry said, I will have someone there in the next 5 minutes.
Wow.
And they were there. And so that's the kind of people they were. So we love that. That's awesome.
They were great people. I have to tell you a little bit. I mean, this sounds weird, but like when you're young, and they showed us, where all, remember they showed us all the facility. I was like, oh, I was really nervous going in. I was thinking, can I handle this? You know what I mean? Can I even do a
Right.
research study with, it was fine, but it was like, I was still a little freaked out walking in, but they're such wonderful people that they made it easy. And, remember we did the customer study for them
Yes.
with you, and boy, they got such great remarks. People love them.
Yeah, we learned a lot from that actually, and it really drove the strategy, and we really they really benefited. And a lot of the funeral homes, and I mentioned the Buchanan family down in Indianapolis. They've become an absolute empire. They own the funeral homes, cemeteries, flower shops,
Wow.
casket companies. They own all of that, and I think they're the largest family-owned funeral business still in the country. So just amazing folks. I miss those days a lot. But so we've been doing this for 30 years, and so that's we're reminiscing a little bit, but we have some funny
Yeah.
things. This one, let's just say, the most well-known motorcycle manufacturer in the country, who shall remain nameless, we helped them launch one of their new radical new design for them back in the 90s. And we were an integral part of that product launch on a global scale. And so, and this was in the early days of multimedia. It was a really difficult project, and we had to push the technology very, very far. Many different languages, all kinds of things. And of course, it had to fit on a CD-ROM back then. And so it was very, very challenging. And so we got this done, and we put a lot of extra work, extra time into it, and we had the post, project client meeting, and the client was over the moon. They were like, "Man, this is the best work that we've had. This is the best experience we've had with any agency." And we were like, "Wow, this is fantastic," And the next thing out of her mouth was, "You're going to have to lower the price, so it's too expensive." And I said, "I don't understand." I said, "We actually lost our shirt on this project because we had to put in so much additional work." And at that time, I don't think there was really anybody else in Milwaukee that could have technically pulled that off. Maybe Northwoods. I think we were probably it for that type of work. I don't want to be too specific, and I said, "Well, why would you say that?" She said, "Look, here's the thing. There is a line of agencies out the door wanting to work with us, all right? So we just don't have to pay it." And I'm a young guy. I'm like in my mid to late 30s. It's my first business I've owned. My answer was, "Well, I think you should probably go work with one of those other agencies. Have a great day. Something changes, let us know." Boom, I was out of there. Never saw any work from them again.
That's
But isn't that something?
But I give you a lot of credit. I bet you they did too, by the way. You know what I mean? I bet you they thought, wow, those people.
I think they were surprised, actually.
Yes.
I think they
Because
thought they had us over a barrel.
No, that's right. Who's going to say no to them? Like they said, they thought they had a kingdom,
I think it was a gamble on their part.
Yeah.
Or maybe there was a line of agencies. I mean, it was a very, very desirable account. And back in those days, we were taking accounts from all the big agencies. I don't think we were that popular with some of the big agencies there. But it was just, I always believe that you can't steal an account. You can only lose an account. All right. If you're not providing enough value, you're going to lose the account. Just because another agency picks that up, it doesn't mean they stole it from you. It means you lost it.
Right.
And so, very thankful for all of those clients that taught us a lot of lessons, and that was a big lesson. And I think, what is the lesson there? I mean, the lesson is it can't be cheap enough. There's no, if the client has this type of mindset, there's no bottom to that well. And so we learned that sometimes it's better to walk away. It doesn't matter how prestigious, right? It just doesn't matter. It was bad business.
We talked about this last week, and sometimes it will come back to you, but sometimes, I hate to say it, but some of those larger accounts, sometimes they want to have you sell your soul. You know what I mean? I've seen it where it's like, and then what happens if you cut your pricing? And then what happens next year or the year? I mean, it's like, it's an endless game. It is.
Well, we did lose a lot of money on that project. We have the the right to show the project and talk about the project and show that we had the client. But yeah, man, that was a tough lesson right there. So what do you got?
I've got so many stories. So I'll tell a funny story and then I'll kind of tell a valuable lesson one. How does that sound? Or
sure.
You tell me which one you want me to tell you. But the one we really have done a lot of unique studies in our life, which is really kind of cool. But one of them was working with an organization where it was for the Society of Automotive Engineers, which is just a huge association. And they had us do a national study with all design engineers for the automotive industry and then manufacturing plant floor. And it was such a neat study. And their goal was, and it's been published, so that's why I'm mentioning their name. It has been published many times. But their goal was, what can the design engineers, or what can we do to facilitate better communication, to be able to have that understanding between when the designs get done and it gets to the shop floor. And and it's just, we were kind of like the go-between to try to talk to both ends to see what can we do to make this more effective. And we were fortunate enough to work with almost all of the major automotive manufacturers. So I'm talking everybody, and I'll have to tell you the funny story that I was going to say about this is we went down to the Toyota plant, and I remember I had one of my staff members with me, and I was warning her. I said, I just want you to know we are unbiased. They're going to tell you so much stuff that is going to be, blah, blah, blah stuff that's going to toot their own horns. You got to be unbiased. So just do whatever you can. Just take the facts, and that's what we're going to report back. Okay. So we both went in knowing they were going to try to brainwash us, et cetera, et cetera. Both of us walked out of that all day session, and we both said, wow, that Toyota company is so great. I think we'd like to go work with them.
It worked on you.
We were both brainwashed. It was just terrible. It was just terrible. So, but it was
awesome.
A funny story. We laugh about it, for years now. It was hilarious. But it was so enjoyable, that study.
I just like your pronunciation of a Toyota.
Oh yeah, Toyota.
Toyota.
Yeah.
But that's the Midwest, right? I'm sure that's how I pronounce it too. I have a Toyota, so I get it, man. Oh yeah, I got a 4Runner. It's awesome. That thing it'll go anywhere. Whether it likes it or not. So do you have another one real quick?
Sure, I have another one. This one's more of a learning experience. Well, it depends. Are we wrapping up or
no? We have a little time. I mean, we're just navel gazing. It's all right.
I'll tell this other story just because I think it might be good for our listeners to kind of. I think it's just a lesson to be learned. But I once worked with a company, and it was a real large association, and we did a study that was not done before. And after we did it, the guy who hired us said, I want to go and make a national presentation in New York. Would you come with me? And so I said, sure. So it's like, okay, so we're going to New York to present what we did. And at the conference, another person walked up from another association and said, would you like to work in Pennsylvania? And I said, sure. And then from there, we did something, and then somebody else came and said, would you like to work in California? And the point of the matter is that one study and that presentation turned into about 20 different clients. Wow. in my career. And so, I guess the moral of that story is, what I would say is try to say yes as many times as you want, because sometimes you just don't feel like it. I mean, but it turned out to the positive. Just a lot of people you'll meet along the way, especially if you do a good job. So it was a fun story.
Absolutely. And trade show industry has really gone down now, and I think the landscape's so different, but we have things like this podcast. So, we get exposed to a lot of people. And hopefully you learn something from us. We do this every single week, Thursday, 11 o'clock Central. It's on LinkedIn. It's on every major podcast platform, everywhere fine podcasts are consumed. And we really, today we're just having some fun with you, but we're always covering stuff you can use, things you can implement. You don't need to hire us to do it. We just want you to be knowledgeable and also knowledgeable enough to choose the right partners so that you don't get taken to the cleaners. I wanted to mention, I don't know if you remember this, but we spent an enormous amount of time. We came up with the story of we used the 3 pigs, and we did a nouveau 3 pigs. I'll put a link in the comments, so you can check out that video. But we did this animation, and it was frame by frame cell animation. Not like Space Ghost where just the head moves or something. It was every frame, and we had a couple of really talented animators. We had original music on it. We wrote this whole story about the three little pigs who were trying to buy a website. And so each little pig tried a different thing, and finally the last little pig chose us. At the time we had a partner company, and of course, they lived happily ever after. But we put a lot of time and energy into that. We were going to send them out in little boxes. We put them on those little mini CD-ROM, and it was just it wasn't a video at the time. It was a little interactive player, because we used to create a lot of these little interactive programs. We had one drinking game where you were in a bar and you were ordering drinks, and every drink you would get drunker and drunker. There was a scale that went from sober to Boris Yeltsin. And when you got to Boris Yeltsin, you would pass out and see the ceiling, and you could interact with the people. And this is in the very earliest days of Macromedia, and so it was very sophisticated programming behind these. But so the Little Pigs was more of a linear sort of story. And so we were going to put in these little boxes, and we put a little straw in there, a little hay, and to pigs, and we were going to send these out as a 3D mailer to our list of targets, and try to get more web development business. And this is in the early days of this is in the early 90s, and what happened was the first anthrax scare. Do you remember this? So anthrax was sent to some Congress people or something. Now it's like every other day. So but that back then it was novel. We ended up not being able to use it.
Oh, that's just
doesn't
scary.
That hurt?
Yeah, it does.
But I remember doing all the sound effects in our little recording studio that we had in the office there, and we brought in a fiddle player named Ketchum. I don't remember his first name, and he just literally watched it on a screen and improvised the whole music track. And it's just a brilliant little piece, and I did put a link. I hope you'll go check it out. So much fun. The three little pigs try to buy a website. So and it pretty much makes fun of everyone in that.
Wow, that sounds like
expensive,
a fun thing to do, but
problem.
How sad, yeah. But I remember that like yesterday with, like you said, the anthrax scare. So there were a lot of creative products that we were just busting with ideas all the time, because we had such a great creative team. We had 23 people. I would say about half of them were the creative team. And so there were just so many ideas, and there were so many cool things that we made that I don't think they got enough play. Little games, remember the little pop-up game where you hit the thing and a little dice jumps? Wackadoodle? Was it Whack-A-Mole?
Something like that. It was like a little plastic dome.
Okay.
And Michael, our art director and animator, he created an electronic animated one. You click it, and it would make the sound, and the dice would go, and it was all randomized, and it would say goofy stuff. It was really fun.
So he was ahead of his time, because now with game development, I mean, he would be like you guys were cutting edge with regard to that.
In a lot of ways we were, and it was the strength of our team, really. It was people that I was teaching at UWM. And, I would pick the cream of the crop from some of those classes, and we would bring them on. And it was a great symbiotic relationship where they brought amazing talent and skill, and we helped them, learn how to operate in an agency environment. But these guys would code. They were animators. They were designers. And so it was remarkable to see what they would come up with. And it was hard not to fund those projects, because they were just a blast. I mean, I wish I could find the little bar drinking game. Is so funny. You click on people as they were walking by, and the drunker you were, the more hostile the people would get towards you. So when you were sober, everybody's friendly, and so you're clicking on them as they'd walk by. And then the drunker you got, the more hostile the people would get, and then pretty soon you'd pass out, and then the game would start over.
I should share that concept with because UW Whitewater, where I've taught for many years, they have a fabulous media arts and game development department and program. I mean, they just are on the cutting edge. But that would be a fun game to create. Maybe we can have them talk to you, and you can get some royalties on that idea.
We'll see if I can find it, and I don't think it'll run on anything modern. Maybe it'll run on that machine back there. I have no idea.
They'd have to recreate it. They'd have to recreate it, but I think it's a fun concept.
It was fun. It was very fun.
I can share another story real quick. Just for all of the listeners, are you familiar? Like when you go to Starbucks or you go to any McDonald's, and at the bottom of any kind of paper cup, it will always say made from, and then it will give you a percentage of recycled paper products. I don't know if you know this, but I think, and in fact, I think Starbucks is up to like 10% now, or whatever the case is. But we were lucky enough, the company, the paper company that had an FDA patent on this for using recycled material was our client, and they came to us and they said, we need you to go out and try to find companies that would be willing and able to use recycled paper products. So it's like something's done, they recycle it, they're going to make new products. And so we did all the research, including getting to Starbucks and other people to see what's the level of acceptability with that. But I have to tell you, we were thinking no one's gonna like that, because think about using recycled paper, Well,
so I'm not the only one thinking toilet paper.
Exactly. I mean, by the way, that's part of it. That is part of it, And so, so they did it, but people were open for it. They really were, and all the environmental movement. But I have to say, 3 years before that actually came to fruition, we knew about it. Our firm knew about it, and so it would be kind of fun because my wife and I'd walk into Starbucks and kind of we see her cups, So, but all of that, and now you can look at just about every fast food place has recycled products. But that was a fun project, but it was one where you couldn't say a thing. You couldn't say a thing about it.
I'd like to formally apologize to Starbucks for my comments. No, I'm I don't drink coffee, which is a very strange thing. Isn't that weird? I don't drink alcohol. I don't drink coffee.
Wow, that's great.
I only drink kelp. No, I don't drink that either. It's terrible. Let me think here.
Give me another story before
this is kind of a horror story, and it was very bewildering.
Okay.
We engaged with a client, and that client knew that they needed a marketing plan. They agreed they needed a marketing plan. We happened to do marketing plans, and we walked them through the process. We made a deck for them. We're not a boilerplate kind of place, so everything's custom for every single client. So we put a lot of effort into making sure they understood what the process looked like, and it was customized for them, and walk them through that. And then, of course, we have our service level agreement, which spells out the deliverables and, again, the process and what's going to happen. And we walked them through that in person, and everything's great. Everything's fine. Totally understands. And so we get in the first part of it, which is a discovery meeting, right? We're asking questions. We're learning about the business, the details. And I would say 15 minutes into this meeting, the owner says, well, I sure hope we get a website out of this.
You should have said,
website not part of the deal. What do you, Kevin? It's not. Where did that even come from? Like, wasn't even mentioned.
Yeah. Wow.
And I still don't know what the takeaway is from that. Like, I don't feel like we could have done anything differently, but it was a huge disconnect, and I noticed it right away, and we kept going with the discovery, but it did derail the entire thing. Now, we did end up building them. This is very rare for us to do. Their website was in such terrible condition that it was absolutely okay for us to end one contract. We're gonna not do a plan right now. We can come back to it later, but it's hard to say no to redoing the website even at this stage, because it's just killing your business. It was just they're an e-commerce business, and it was just terrible. And so we thought it would be okay to kind of shift gears. But I still don't really understand how it happened. I hope we get a website out of this. It's like shopping for houses, and you're like, well, I hope we get a Mercedes out of this.
Yeah, it's going to be one in the garage.
Maybe it comes with a house. I don't know.
Well, I think you asked, what's the learning lesson? The moral of the story is there every other time now when you walked into a new client and you were going to go through the discovery process, you have to say, now, are you expecting a website? So set the expectations right away.
It could be anything under the sun, honestly. And it's just part, I think, of the business. Clients hire us because they don't have a good understanding. They trust us to help them solve their problems. And I think sometimes they have selective memories. Sometimes maybe they say that they understand, but they really don't. I mean, it's one that I don't have a good answer for it. We looked very hard at ourselves, and was there something we missed? Were we not clear? We were really, really clear. But ultimately we did the right thing for them, and it worked out okay. But very confusing. One of the many confusing situations over the years. But I thought that was pretty wild.
Can I share my story of how I only
You don't have to ask
couldn't-
me. It's your show.
You know what? You know what's sad is I bet you people watch. They go, "Oh, these guys are just a bunch of old codgers. They're just sitting here telling stories." But I've got thousands of them. But I wanted to tell the story because if my family's watching this, they wouldn't forgive me if I didn't tell this story. But this is the story of actually how I got into the marketing business in the first place. So when I was a kid, my dad used to love to take us down and or order from. There was a catalog that came from the mail from a place called Sheldon Court. It was like we call it a Chotsky place, or you know what I mean, or like advertising agencies might sell it as, I forgot, the little added trinkets or whatever you give away.
Oh, sure. The little there's a term for it. I'm blanking on it now too. Trinkets and trash was an old term.
Trinkets and trash. We'll come
not
up
a
with
very
it.
good term.
No, we'll come up with it. Promotional items.
Promotional items. There you go.
That's kind of what they did, and this was Sheldon Court. And so anyhow, long story longer, you would call them up because they have a catalog. You'd call them up, and this guy was the master of perception and marketing. I mean, it was interesting. And so you would call him up, and he'd say, they'd say Sheldon Court, and then you would try to say, okay, you might ask a question about a product, or you try to order, and he'd say, "I'm busy. Don't you guys, if you don't get your act together, you can't order from me." And then he'd hang up, and then you'd go, "Ooh, ooh, ooh," and then you'd call back, and you'd be like real tentative, and then you go, "Okay, I want this," and this, and then he would start yelling at you, and he would yell at you, "I am so busy. I don't have time for this kind of stuff," and he gave you the perception that he was out of control, busy, that your call was just, he was doing you a favor. Anyhow, so fast forward. So one day, my dad and I, we were in Chicago, and he says to me, and by the way, I'm like 7 or 8 years old, just so you know. He says, "Let's stop in at Sheldon Court and just kind of look around. We've never been there in person." So sure enough, so we walk into Sheldon Court. I remember, I think it was on Devon Street, and we walk in, and Sheldon's on the phone screaming same things. "I'm busy, God, you're wasting my time," and he's doing the whole shenanigans. Okay, there wasn't a soul in the place. It was all theatrics, So I was like,
he scared them all off.
No. This was his deal.
This was his shtick. I don't know if I can recommend that.
No,
that's hilarious.
We were like, my dad and I walked out just like kind of freaked out, like, wow. It's like it was just a hilarious story. But he was a master of perception, that's for sure.
It reminds me of we'll take it out with this. We won't really have any final thoughts today because I don't know if we've had any thoughts at all.
No regular thoughts.
No regular thoughts. But it reminds me of a restaurant we went to in Memphis. My wife was pregnant with my son, and so this was, it was quite a while ago, and 23 years ago, and it was this barbecue restaurant. And the funny thing is, the thing that their shtick there was to berate and scream at the customers and swear like sailors.
Yeah.
And then the people, so behind the counter, they're just swearing at you and yelling at you and just degrading you. And then you'd have some of the customers were regulars, right? So they were in on it, and so they were screaming back at them, and it was the F word, and it was just on and on and on. It was just unbelievable, and so we were totally, like many new people there, and that was the idea. We were like, what in the hell is going on? Best barbecue, amazing barbecue. Wow. And we did figure out it was kind of a shtick, but oh my gosh, it was very shocking.
Isn't that funny? A place where people are yelling at you, it's attracting people. So,
and it attracts people. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think I want to try it, but But anyway, great stories. We have so many of them. Maybe we'll do this again sometime. Next week we'll be back to our regular programming where hopefully we will be able to share some knowledge with you that'll help you make a better decision, improve your marketing, maybe help you avoid some of the shenanigans that happen in the business that, we've maybe been a part of some of those shenanigans in the past. But I appreciate it, man. It's good to see you as always.
You as well. So, and thank you so much. And hopefully people tolerated our stories,
That's right. And I want to remind everybody, if you're listening to this on audio only, you go to b2bmarketingmindset.com and there is video. We do use visual aids sometimes. We'll try to describe them for the listeners, but the podcast is audio. But if you do want to see the video, you can go there. You can subscribe there. You can subscribe Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, all over the place. So until we meet again, sir, over and out.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You've been listening to the B2B Marketing Mindset with Pete Monfre and Bill Lowell. Add to the conversation by commenting, sharing, and liking. And don't forget to subscribe and check out the links in the comments. Learn more at b2bmarketingmindset.com.